Summer isn't just weather. Summer is a state of mind. So we're gonna put on a nice wine shirt. Okay, yeah, that's too many buttons. What are we doing here? You know what I mean? That's a rough one. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Tuesday marked the official end of the primary transfer window that officially opened in February, but essentially opened at any point that your favorite team got eliminated in 2023. So that goes back to decision day, October. It's been a long way. Now we can officially, definitively talk about the end of the transfer window and what I think to be the 5 best transfer windows in MLS in 2024. Let's get into it. Before we get into the top 5, there's some honorable mentions because always the list of 5 always has, 1 or 2 more. But first honorable mention for me is DC United. Low-key, really fantastic winter window. It was the first one after naming Ali Mackay GM, who in turn named Troy Lezane head coach. So first and foremost, looks like they hired a very good head coach. They definitely have an identity. And they shed a whole lot of bad contracts that I didn't think they were going to be able to get out of so quickly and so easily. And they also added a few core pieces like Aaron Herrera, right? Like, this was a very important window before the window kind of thing. And truly, I don't think that they'll really have kind of an explosive incoming window until next winter. But they needed this in terms of their timeline of rebuilding and resetting the roster and giving the team a good foundation to move forward with. This is a clear long-term plan, and they're thinking ahead and not trying to do bad short-term fixes, which, I don't know, the first time in the better part of a decade for DC United. So I think that's very positive, and DC had a really strong winter offseason, even if it wasn't the most spectacular. I feel similarly about Charlotte FC, probably to a slightly lesser extent than DC. Look, they have a cohesive identity and vision top down for the first time probably in their MLS existence. Like, Dean Smith looks like a very good managerial hire. A lot of the pieces on the roster make sense for what they want. And now with the DP spot open, a U22 initiative slot, and like a Max Tam slot that they could all add this summer and are planning to in all 3 of those, they have their idea. They have their play style and identity. So the players will be fitting and the signings will be informed by what they want on the field. Again, I really like Liel Abada, and I think that there's going to be a couple more splashes in the summer, so that's another team to watch. And for me, the biggest snub of this top 5, CF Montreal. Look, if Mateus Kokoro didn't get injured, and if we saw maybe more from Dominic Yankov, I would have had a decision to make about putting them in the top 5. But they also hired a really good manager in Laurent Couture. Kokoro and Yankov, I think, are 2 really strong low-key signings. We just kind of haven't seen their best yet because of the injuries and everything else. But CF Montreal had a really strong window as well. All right, on to the top 5. Number 5, the New York Red Bulls. Their key additions were Emil Forsberg, Noah Eilert, and another U22 initiative winger. The key departures was Omir Fernandez, Drew Yearwood, Luquinhas, Tom Barlow. So, in the macro sense, before talking about how good I think Emil Forsberg is in and of himself, right? The macro sense, fans should be really happy that the New York Red Bulls spent real-life adult money on a player over 23 years old. That's not something that they've really done before this. Like Dante Van Zier last year, that was kind of, and Corey Burke as a free agent. Look, at that didn't work out and it hasn't worked out. But I was just excited to see the team. Oh, look, like they're signing senior players and they're actually trying to do win now type of moves. Again, Corey Burke didn't work out. Dante Van Zier hasn't worked out yet. Emil Forsberg has. But again, I think 2 years ago, Aaron Long was the only player over the age of 25 that started a game in MLS. There was, go look back at their signings. All of their key signings have been young players. Again, Luquinhas was at least in his prime. But look, Emil Forsberg isn't a young player that they're going to develop and sell on for more later. He isn't a player that they're looking to bring to Leipzig or Salzburg or whatever. This is hey, this guy gives the New York Red Bulls the best chance to win. And if we're not trying to do that, then what's the point of us being here, right? And I think the Red Bulls, they're always going to be about youth development and talent identification and all that, right? But don't just put it as a U23 team. Like, that's insulting to the fans, and that's quite honestly not how you develop talent. Like, go back to what Jim Curtin says about the Philadelphia Union. Talking about Brendan Aronson and Mark McKenzie. He's like, yeah, if we sucked, less people would be paying attention to Brendan and Mark McKenzie. If you just have a U23 team around your highest rated young players, for me, that's just not how youth development is best. They hired Sandro Schwartz, who I think is looking like a very good manager. And more importantly, they're still going to have Red Bull identity, as they always should, but they've dialed it back just a little bit. And in modern soccer, it's so important to have a changeup, a secondary pitch, right? Against LAFC, I think was a prime example. They dropped their line of confrontation much deeper. That's something that this team never did under recent managers, and they got a draw. They should have won. They were unlucky not to win. So, that's really positive. coming all the way back around, Emil Forsberg is the biggest reason why I have them in the top 5. So I just talked about the macro level. On the micro level, he's a phenomenal signing. He's somebody that lifts all of the players around him. The attack looks so much better. And obviously Lewis Morgan coming back from injury has helped a lot, but the two of them are making each other better. Van Zier is looking better with Emil Forsberg around him. The midfield, all of this stuff, right? Like, Emil Forsberg is a very strong player in this league. And this winter window was the most in a while that I can think. This was a serious winning type of window from the New York Red Bulls. This is a serious soccer club at this point. And look, whether things work out or they don't, this is really positive news for fans who were getting a little bit fed up with how the team was being run. So, well done to the New York Red Bulls. I do genuinely believe that this is a team that's in trophy contention. I think that all of this is real. Noah Isla, by the way, has been awesome. U22 initiative players just to win starting spots is impressive because there's been a lot more misses than hits straight up across the league with the U22 initiative. For every Federico Redondo, there's, I don't know, I don't feel like crapping on too many players. You know, Edwin Mosquera, or look at what Atlanta's done. Like, they spent, what, $12 million on 3 players, and none of them have panned out, or 4 players, actually more than that because of Eric Lopez, right? Like, so not just that, but young center backs adapting to a new league and immediately winning a starting spot. Like, he's been awesome. Like, phenomenal talent identification, deal making, and well done to Noah Isla for coming here, adapting, and playing really well. One more note I want to add on the Red Bulls, right? And so, again, when you really boil it down, the biggest addition and the biggest reason I'm bullish on them is one player. It's Emil Forsberg. Again, I really like Noah Isla, but like, without Forsberg, they wouldn't be anywhere near the top 5 for me. I don't want to get confused with being busy for being good, right? Just because a team makes a ton of signings or departures doesn't automatically mean it was a great window. Look at the Chicago Fire over the last 5 years, right? And just because a team isn't doing a lot doesn't mean it was a bad window or just a whatever window. The Red Bulls desperately needed a star-level attacker. They brought in Emil Forsberg. They needed to get this coaching hire right. They brought in Sandro Suarez. They needed to get rid of a couple players. They got real money for Drew Yearwood and Tom Barlow. They offloaded Luquinhas to South America. Like, all of those moves was everything they needed to do. And I'm not going to knock them because they didn't have a ton to do this winter. So that's why the New York Red Bulls are number 5. Number 4, this team was very productive, but they were very busy. The opposite of the Red Bulls offseason. They had a whole lot more to do, and they did it. Number 4, Colorado Rapids. Key additions include Georgi Mihailovic, Sam Vine, Zach Steven, Omir Fernandez, Lamine Diak. Key departures, Jack Price, Diego Rubio, Andrew Gutman, William Yarbrough, Danny Wilson. All in all, 12 players in, 19 players out. That's wild, right? Like, this was an absolute necessity. The fact that they were able to do all of this in one window, and outside of the first half of their first game against Portland, they've been good this year, man. Like, we have like national TV bias and week 1 bias. So I think a lot of people who haven't watched Colorado Rapids play over the last month are still thinking that they're that team that were down 4-0 at halftime to Portland who scored on all 4 of their first shots, right? Colorado are good, man. Georgi Mihailovic has shown he can lead a team like this and be the best player on a good team. And he was that in Montreal. And there were questions about whether that would translate to Colorado, Chris Armas, and everything around him. I think those are fair questions. I think those questions have been answered. The answer is yes, Georgi Mihailovic can be your attacking talisman. And it helps that Rafael Navarro is scoring more. Kevin Cabral is looking better. They have other options in the attack. It's not all Georgi Mihailovic, but Georgi is their best attacking player. And he's proven that you can be a very good team with Georgi as your best player. I really like the deal to get Sam Vines back. People I've talked to in Colorado have always said if he's coming back to MLS, they want it to be in Colorado. It has to be in Colorado, all that stuff. Another thing that I really like about their winter is the Zach Steffen signing. Like, he's not going to be necessarily cheap, but it was an opportunistic signing nonetheless because they didn't have to put in acquisition costs, which I thought the only way he could come back to MLS was on a DP deal just because I thought it was going to take a multi-million-dollar transfer, and it didn't. What I really like about that signing, that wasn't the plan. They didn't go into this offseason saying, we need a new goalkeeper. Marko Ilic was going to be the new starter. He was fine. He was okay. A lot of data friends that I have say that he was very bad, quite honestly, last year. But they were content for him to be the starter. Then they figured out what it would cost to go get Zach Steffen, and they said, hell, let's go do it. And look, having a plan is very important, but being able to deviate from that plan when the right opportunity arises is very, very good. The flexibility, fluidity, and again, realizing where a deal is and getting it done, I love it. And also just the diversity of where they brought players in. Kamani Stewart-Baines, Wayne Frederick, like these are draft players. Like they went to South America for Rafael Navarro. They got Georgi Mihailovic, an American who's in Europe, and they also used a draft. They used free agency to Omir Fernandez. Like, I really like that. And a team like the Colorado Rapids prides themselves on finding edges wherever they can, just because they're not going to spend $15 million on a transfer. They're not going to outspend teams. So they need to do stuff like this. And that's very impressive. Lastly, in hindsight, it is very, very easy to be like, yeah, obviously they should have gotten rid of all the players they got rid of, right? But in reality, it's not that easy. Jack Price, Diego Rubio, William Yarbrough, Danny Wilson, they were key players to that 2021 team. And there was an argument to be made that the only reason that they've been so bad was coaching decision and changing the tactics and injuries. So, I wouldn't have agreed with it, but you could have talked me into, let's run it back one more year with Price and Rubio and whatever. And they decided not to. Those are very difficult decisions, fan favorites, guys that the club loves. And they moved on from them to make room for all the new additions, and it's working out really well. Again, in hindsight, it looks very easy, but that is not easy. Number 3, Inter Miami. I'm going to be honest with you. I was on the fence at first about whether I was going to include them or not, because straight up, half of these signings that I'm going to talk about that I like so much, really only available to Inter Miami because of the pull of Lionel Messi, because of the pull of South Beach and everything else, right? So at first it's like, should we be celebrating? Yeah, like Luis Suarez, he's only coming on a non-DP deal to Miami. Like, is what it is. But they did a lot of work to maneuver around the cap. I know that there's going to be a lot of comments that say that they're getting that. I know that there's going to be a lot of comments saying MLS is just looking the other way, and fair enough. Maybe we'll see. But as of right now, they're cap compliant. I haven't seen any evidence to the contrary. And they had tough decisions to get rid of good players, and then they were able to bring in others, right? Like, so Luis Suarez, obviously great signing. What more can you say, right? Like, I think all of us watching this and doing this video would have said that. Federico Redondo is my favorite U22 initiative signing. I think that this kid was one that usually skips air quote stepping stone club. He's usually one that goes straight from Argentina to a bigger club in Europe. Like, maybe not directly to Real Madrid, but to like a very good team. He definitely didn't need to stop in MLS. So the fact that Miami got that deal done is super exciting. I also didn't know that he could cover ground the way he could, and that's probably on me for just taking the Sergio Busquets comps too literally, because Sergio Busquets, for as world-class as he's been his whole career, not a ground cover, right? He has a lot of different strengths. So, like, when I was seeing Federico Redondo kind of go box to box, and, like, I was like, whoa, like, Sergio Busquets can run. I was like, yeah, maybe I was just, like, wasn't ready for that. So that was a nice little bonus. Julian Gressel has been a phenomenal signing. I knew that Miami were going to want him. Tata Martino loves him. Pretty much the day that Tata got the job, I was like, oh, they're going to be in for Gressel this winter. But I just figured they weren't going to have the money for it. They're going to have salary cap problems. They're going to have to get rid of players, and I'm sure that there's other players on their list that they wanted. I just figured it wasn't going to happen. So the fact that they found the money to get Gressel in, he's been everything they needed him to be. He's somebody who can fit really well with Lionel Messi, Busquets, Alba, and Suarez, and he can also take the reps when they're gone. He's been crucial to this team, and I just can't. I know I've talked about it plenty, but I can't say enough about this signing. Nicolas Friere has been quite good as well. His passing ability has been very, very good, and I think that's going to become more and more important as the season goes on. And Mateus Rojas, like, that's a Paraguay international, another opportunistic signing because of his contract dispute with Corinthians. And again, this deal probably isn't available to the Vancouver Whitecaps or the New England Revolution, but I mean, good for Miami for leaning on their advantages and making it happen. Quickly on the departures, I criticized the Gregory move in particular. I understood the Kamal Miller trade, even though I would have tried to do everything I can to keep Gregory, Kamal Miller, and DeAndre Yedlin. And maybe they did. Probably they did. Exactly. Yedlin was on the team through the beginning of the season. Gregory is somebody that I thought would just be the perfect person to put next to Busquets. But they ended up bringing in Federico Redondo and obviously Gressel, and they have other options there. And they needed to get rid of Gregory, Kamal Miller to be cap compliant because teams don't want your end of bench overpriced deadwood. Like, to get where they needed to go with the salary cap, they obviously had to lose good players. So, look, I was critical of it, but so far, so good. Number 2, FC Cincinnati. Key additions: Miles Robinson, Luca Oriano, Pavel Buca, DeAndre Yedlin, Corey Beard, Kevin Kelsey. Key departures: Brandon Vasquez, Alvaro Barreal, Yerson Mosquera, Junior Moreno, Santi, Arias, Marco Angulo. It is really difficult to get to the summit in MLS, of course. To win a trophy, to do everything else. That is incredibly hard, and that's why there's trophy celebrations. That's what we all do this for. That's the pinnacle. It is even harder to stay at the top. Look at what LAFC has done over the last 4 or 5 years. How many times they've had to evolve their roster. FC Cincinnati wins a trophy. They lose Vasquez, Barreal, Mosquera, Moreno, Arias. Like, 5 starters, 3 starters on insanely great deals, Vasquez, Barreal, and Mosquera. Mosquera was a fantastic signing last year. It was very clearly, if things went well as they did, going to be just a one-year thing because he's clearly a Premier League level player, or at least a high-level championship level player, a rising Colombian international who was acquired by Wolverhampton for $7 million. So I'm not knocking them for having to replace him. I'm giving them full credit for having him for a year. That was a wonderful deal. Then that was really smart and great identification. Brandon Vasquez ended up getting $8.5 million or whatever it was from Monterrey, and with Barreal leaving as well, they kept good on their promises to Vasquez and Barreal that, hey, stay this summer. I know you're not thrilled about it. We're gonna sell you in the winter, we promise. And they did. And they brought in, like, the way that they've had attacking issues this year, and they've changed their identity. Miles Robinson coming in, like, this defense is elite. It's a different level of strength. They went out and got the best free agent. As I was reporting during that process, Miles Robinson, a lot of the teams in the league wanted him. He wasn't taking meetings with many teams. It was like Cincy and I think 1 or 2 others, if that. So, like, that shows how quickly Cincy's reputation has changed and what they mean to players on the market. Miles Robinson fits better in this team. I think he's going to continue to get stronger and stronger as the season goes on. Same thing with Luca Oriano. DeAndre Yedlin, I couldn't believe they found a way to fit that onto the cap. So that was super impressive and it filled the only hole they had left. Unless you Kevin Kelsey offers them. Like I was talking about the other day, I'm really intrigued by this talent. Like, don't expect him to come in and immediately score 10 games in a row or whatever, right? But, like, super talented kid. And maybe he hits quickly, maybe he doesn't. But I'm excited to see what happens. They still have an MVP in the attack. They still have a $7 million center forward in Aaron Bupenza. Now they can rely less on them because of how elite the defense is. So I love what Cincinnati did because evolving this roster, look at these names. That's 5 starters out, 5 starters in. Incredible. And lastly, the number 1 best transfer window 2024 in MLS is the LA Galaxy. Key additions: Joseph Pansel, Gabriel Peck, Mickey Imane, John McCarthy, John Nelson, Amiro Garces. Key departures: Chicharito, Douglas Costa, Lucas Caligari, Billy Sharp, Tyler Boyd, and more. Look, sometimes this game doesn't have to be that complicated. Not saying things are easy. Things are very difficult. But things aren't as complex as sometimes I think we make them to be. This LA Galaxy roster build is a phenomenal example. One key angle I look at in analyzing moves and rosters and roster builds and everything else. Is this just a collection of talent, or is this a cohesive unit? LA Galaxy had Ricky Puig, one of the very best players in the league, has a ton of strengths and some weaknesses. What's the best way to maximize Ricky Puig? You put dynamic, athletic, goal-scoring, intelligent wingers that make runs and make the correct runs and can finish goals when they get in the 18 to give him space and people to pass to. You know what you don't give him? Douglas Costa, who is the antithesis of that player profile. He was somebody who wants to come in on the ball, run when he wants, probably not, miss games, get red cards, whatever. Joseph Pansel and Gabriel Peck is just straight up exactly what they need. With Ricky Puig, his negatives include he's not a very good defender, straight up, right? And that's okay, because there's plenty of special players in this league who don't defend very well, and they still have they have teams built around them that make everybody better. So you know what else you need? You don't need 2 overlapping fullbacks always going forward. So you sign Mickey Imane, who is very good in joining the attack, but he doesn't need to only overlap. So then he can stay and kind of pinch infield sometimes and form more of a back 3 or whatever the game calls for, because he's very intelligent and understands how to manipulate space very well, which allows Julian Alde on the other side, who does need to overlap to make the most of himself. That's balance right there. It wouldn't make sense to have 2 overlapping fullbacks. So those 3 signings, phenomenal. Upwards of $21, $22 million between the 3 of them. It's expensive. It's not easy. Those deals were not easy to get done. They looked at other targets as well, but they didn't overcomplicate things. Honestly, their best move was probably naming Will Kuntz CSO, giving him the keys to the kitchen, and just letting him cook, get out of his way. And look at the signings that they made. It's been just a phenomenal A-plus offseason for the LA Galaxy. That's why this team is top of the Western Conference. That's why this team is a legitimate trophy contender. Still have defensive issues, but this team, it's an actual serious team and not just a meme club like they were last year. Like, even the players that were here last year look much better. Surprise, surprise. You put players that complement each other, the base level of all the rest get better. Hell, look at even Ricky Puig. Like last year, he had to try to do a lot on his own because he didn't have a ton of attacking help. Look at Dejan Joveljic. With all the more chances and space, he's looked so much better. Like, guys, we don't need to overcomplicate things. And that's not to sound dismissive, because that is a skill in and of itself. Identifying how to solve the problem and solving the problem. Like, they didn't, sure, Joseph Panso, when it was known that maybe like this was a possible addition, 26 years old, entering his prime, insane goal record in Belgium, the exact player profile you want to put around Ricky Puig. Don't overcomplicate it. Go sign him. Gabriel Peck, similar profile. Highly rated Brazilian youth international. Probably cost a little bit more than they wanted. Screw it. Go and sign him. This is the right signing. Don't overcomplicate it. You don't got to go to a market that no other MLS team has done just to, show everybody how smart you are, or try to show everybody how smart you are. You don't have to be the coach that has these crazy tactical wrinkles. Like, Christian Latanzio was probably a better, a more creative, at least, air quote, tactician than Brian Schmetzer. Brian Schmetzer is 15 times the coach because he understands put your best players in their best positions, and that's how they succeed. Like, look at Seattle's run, and then, look what happened, in Charlotte playing Brandt Bronico, inverted fullback in out of possession, and then in possession he comes into central midfield. And guess what, dude? What are you doing? Just put your best players in their best positions. Galaxy, you have Ricky Puig. Put players around them that make sense and make everybody better. So well done to the LA Galaxy, the very best winter window in MLS 2024. Whew. All right, sorry for the stray there, Latanzio and 2023 Charlotte FC. That was mean. Didn't mean to, but it's kind of is what it is. That'll do it for me today. It is, while I said the summer is a state of mind, it is actually 65, so I think I'm going to go sit on the beach for a little while. See you guys later.